Ike here, welcome back to the channel. So your portfolio is probably down this week. My portfolio is down this week. And how do I know this? Well, all the major indices around the world are in the red. And one company is the root cause of all this market volatility. And that company is Evergrande, the Chinese property company whose share price, surprisingly, is down 84% year to date. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what Evergrande does, the C word that has all the markets spooked, and the potential next steps for Evergrande to see how they can get themselves out of this situation. So let's get into it. So Evergrande is China's second largest property developer, and at one point was one of the most valuable companies in the world. Evergrande employs 200,000 permanent employees and has about 4 million subcontractors. The company has 1.5 million developments in progress on their books. So this gives you the scale of Evergrande business and why most people would consider it too big to fail. But why is the market so concerned? Well, Evergrande has over $310 billion of debt on their books, making it the most indebted property developer in the world. This problem is they can't service this debt. The Evergrande situation poses a systemic risk to the Chinese economy. Evergrande has deep ties to financial institutions and working class consumers across the whole of China. A disorderly collapse will have far-reaching impacts financially and emotionally. Like most emerging economies, property is usually the only asset that people are invested in, and all their wealth is tied to their property or the land that they own. So a housing market collapse would be catastrophic. So how did Evergrande get themselves into this situation? Well, it's a combination of growing too fast using debt and government intervention to deleverage the housing market. So one common practice of property developers like Evergrande in China, which they actually excelled at, was to bid for land significantly higher than the market price. It didn't matter to them because the risks got transferred to the flat buyers and the banks that financed the purchase of this property. So this process worked as long as Evergrande could keep borrowing money at low rates. But real estate companies tend to have a long cash conversion cycle because it takes many months per project to get from an empty piece of land to marketable buildings. So all this while construction is extremely capital intensive and companies need to hold a ton of inventory on their book. This inventory isn't very liquid, and this becomes very important later on. So 20% of China's GDP comes from housing, and the Chinese government has been aware for a while about the amount of leverage in their housing market, and they brought in rules to prevent this one sector from crushing their whole economy should something happen. But in order to abide by these new rules, Evergrande had to deleverage itself so it could keep borrowing at low rates. But in this process of deleveraging, it had to reduce the prices of the buildings that they were selling, some by as much as 25 to 30%, which in turn flooded the market with units which devalued their assets even more. Another problem is that the assets they had aren't very liquid and they were finding it hard to get the cash in order to meet their debt obligations. But at the same time, the value of the stock they had on their books was being devalued. This created a vicious cycle in which led to their credit crunch. Evergrande has also been doing a bit too much. So this property developer had an electrical vehicle business, a video streaming business, an amusement park, and a health chain. Also a wealth management arm. So you can see that they spread themselves a bit too thin and they were doing way too much. Globally, we've seen commodity markets falling for weeks now, which was probably a precursor to what's happening now. The miners are also taking note. That's how contagion works. Aussie miners are the obvious play here. You can see that Rio Tinto has established a downward trend and is looking primed for large moves down. BHP and Fortescue are also looking equally awful. In regards to how far this could spread, Evergrande's debt is wildly held by a number of foreign banks and investment managers. This includes UBS, BlackRock, Royal Bank of Canada, and smaller emerging market fund managers. On last count, Evergrande is in debt to 128 banks and 121 non-banking institutions. That's how you get into $300 billion of debt. So what can they do? What is the plan moving forward? The word is that bailout isn't on the cards, but this story is still developing, so who knows, there are some options available. Option 1, they could liquidate their existing assets, sell their land, their properties for cash. Option 2, restructure their contract terms to push out the maturity dates. And option 3 is a debt for equity swaps. Option 4 is sell more liquidity, issue more shares. Option 5 is declare bankruptcy, which looks like that's where things are heading. And option 6 is a government bailout, which is still on the cards, but who knows if that's going to happen. So this is a wait and see situation. Evergrande probably won't fail, but what will Beijing actually do? Act quickly with a bailout and be viewed as condoning the financial excess that led to this problem, or fail to act and allow the collapse to ripple through the entire economy that is just recovering from COVID. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.